if you ask the questions using the sidebar option within GoToWebinar, or if you tweet us the questions using the hashtag #GreatestCS, we'll be able to answer questions live as you ask them, and then also if anything comes up after and you want to use the hashtag, we'll be answering things on Twitter as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And let's talk about why I created this, insanely hyperbolic title. Pretty much setting the bar pretty high for Steve and Adam to achieve today. The answer to this is really simple. Content is really the driving factor of inbound marketing, and something that we all feel businesses must do in today's competitive online world. And here's the deal: you've probably heard that already from every industry influencer or anyone that you talk to about internet marketing. But we feel what you haven't really heard is exactly how to make this happen. No matter what your industry is, or no matter what your budget is or expertise, we want to show you the step-by-step plan on how to make it all a reality for your business. So the best way to describe this kind of how portion of content marketing, I wanted to use kind of the content architecture analogy. To create remarkable content that drives real results for your business, you're going to need a plan. You'll need a process, and you're really going to need to know the best way to construct the right content that meets your business goals. So today we hope to achieve just that, and so much that, as this picture shows, your brain's going to explode. And we're going to talk about exactly how to plan a simple yet effective content strategy that will get results for your business or for your clients. How to streamline your content creation process to save both time and money, obviously two huge factors, no matter how you choose to really have your content created. Tips and resources that are going to give you everything you need to create effective, compelling content on a regular basis, which is key. And lastly, how to promote your content across the web to get the biggest impact and return possible. And before I forget, we will be announcing the Amazon gift card winner at the end of the presentation, so definitely stay tuned for that. Okay? All right, enough from me. I'm going to hand it over to Adam Japko. He's going to give you an awesome look at content marketing and the best practices within.
Thank you, Justin. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning to all of you still on the West Coast. I thought it might be appropriate to really just get a definition down quickly about what content marketing is, and develop a perspective around that before we get into more granular aspects of how to execute it and what the benefits for your business are. So very literally, content marketing is a term that encompasses almost every marketing format that involves the creation and the sharing of content in order to get at customers or communities that you understand and that are potential customers. And the whole idea is to drive profitable customer action. There's no other reason to execute content marketing if you can't drive profitable customer action. So it subscribes to the notion that delivering high quality and relevant and valuable information to prospects and customers will drive this kind of action. If you look at the cartoon, you'll see in the center this little overlap between what you want to say and what they're interested in. And this is the sweet spot of content marketing. All of the ROI of content marketing, whether it be online or offline, happens when the intention of the potential customer's information search lines up with what you've got to say. So with that, I just want to, here we go. Let's go offline for a second, because I think understanding online content marketing is best exhibited when we look at really brick and mortar type of examples. When I go back and look at really big wins in content marketing, if any of you are from the Northeast and you remember Wanamaker's or are old enough to remember the Wanamaker's department store, it was the first department store in the United States. But on top of that, they had to sell a lot of clothing. And one of the things that Wanamaker did was started the first fashion show in the United States. That fashion show attracted all kinds of interested women in that particular area, and all of them were prospective customers. And this was one of the early turn of the 20th century examples of content marketing. Another great example of content marketing, and Justin, if you can just give me back the you know, the pointer, I can advance the slides. Because right now I can't advance the slides.
There you go.
Okay, thanks. So another big example of the win in content marketing history was also around the turn of the century when Jell-O created a recipe book. And I think this was like 1903 or 1904, and they distributed a free recipe book with Jell-O, and that recipe book alone back then created over $1 million in product sales just by giving out the information that their prospective customers would find interesting. Another kind of more recent example, if any of you are Deadheads out there, is the Grateful Dead band. And the unorthodox approach that they took starting in the late 60s and all the way through the 90s as the entire record industry figured out its model, they said, we're going to let people tape our live music and distribute it freely. And we want people to trade it, and we want all of this music that other bands are putting on vinyl and charging for, we want to give it away for free. Because our economic model are our live concerts, and we tour 400, you know, a couple hundred times a year. And what we want to do is we want to create the content and get it consumed by the people who will most likely get into our economic engine. Another more recent and moving online example of good content marketing is the Food Network. Now, the Food Network distributes free online recipes to promote both their network on you know, their broadcast network, but also to drive more traffic and get more eyeballs on the web so they can monetize those eyeballs. And now what's happened is all of those kind of straightforward examples of here's content, give me some information about you so I can continue to talk to you, has become a very sophisticated approach in online marketing as the web and search and tools for lead conversion became more and more proliferated and part of small business internet marketing. Let's take a look at the limitations of traditional content marketing compared to online marketing. So a really great example of traditional content marketing is this email that I just got a couple of days ago. I've just taken up fly casting. I've bought thousands of dollars worth of fly equipment that I'll probably never use as much as I should from this Orvis shop, and I'm on their mailing list. And what they want me to do is keep coming back and buying more and more stuff from them. So as part of that, they're inviting me to a roll casting clinic, and they said it's free. That's really good. They're giving me free content. They're going to train me, and they're going to hook me in, and they're going to answer my questions, and I'm going to buy more stuff from them. Unfortunately, the class size is limited to 8 people. So they're going to put a significant amount of effort into this piece of content marketing, and their benefit will only be 8 people. When you move into the sophisticated inbound and content marketing web architecture, all of a sudden the same amount of effort turns into an annuity-like program that constantly generates new prospects, but at the same time, it will generate a significantly amount of more prospects at the time and pace that the prospects become interested, not on the calendar that you set when only a few can make it. So when you look at this sort of sophisticated content marketing outline, it starts right here above your company's sales funnel. And this is where lots and lots and lots of content, and Steve's going to talk to you about this in a little bit, how that plays into building an audience if you do it well. And when you get these folks to find their way to your home base on the web, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to work really hard to create calls to action and lead capture mechanism to drop those visitors into your sales funnel. And then once they're in the sales funnel, the lead conversion program, which is everything from social networking to social listening to lead nurturing and analytics and optimization, happens until a portion of these leads that you drop out of here come out as customers. That's today's sophisticated inbound content marketing program, demonstrated in a really simple slide. Now, one of the things that's important to understand before we start thinking about creating content is long-tail search and how that plays into SEO and content marketing. And understanding that if I'm a business, indeed, there are a lot of people searching a few phrases. So the top couple hundred keywords that are floating around the web in your industry are searched by the most people. But the fact of the matter is, the most searches, if you go along this bottom line here, are occurring beyond the top keyword searches. So more traffic is generated at the long end of the tail, where more people are searching more different search terms. This is really, really critical because the way this happens is by adding the number of keywords to the search, right? So if I just searched Atlanta houses versus Atlanta houses with swimming pools in Buckhead with already furnished and in good school district, I'm going to get a very specific return. And by getting a very specific return, you're rewarded because the long tail has a positive impact on visitors that show up at your website or blog. The more words in a search, the more specific the search, the higher the conversion rate. And so you can see the 5-word searches will have higher conversion rates than the 4- and 3-word searches. And so this specificity of search and the page alignment, very much like that cartoon that I showed you early on, you creating the content that your customers are looking for and the questions that they have, and your customers being very specific in that search, create the greatest amount of conversion of your traffic. Here at DigitalSherpa, we kind of experimented with this, and what you're actually seeing is a little over a year of our monthly leads. And what you're going to see is that somewhere right in here from the August to December period, we decided to go for a high traffic strategy. And what happened was we did generate a lot more monthly leads, but the problem was that these leads were not converting as well, and our conversion rates dropped significantly against our traffic. And so we reverted back to our very tight 15 or 20 keyword focused content strategy, dropped the number of leads, increased the conversion rate of our traffic into leads, and increased the conversion of our leads to customers. So it's a really, really powerful strategy that we proved out for our own marketing at DigitalSherpa. We've taken it so far with DigitalSherpa as to try and understand the behavior of anyone that shows up at our website because they found some content that they're looking for, and try to understand what behavior is most important when we're trying to value a lead. And as you can see over here, that page views, any visitor that comes to our site and looks between 11 and 30 page views or 40 page views have the highest value to us in terms of business conversion. With this program, and you can see the number of visits also rank high. The fact that they're coming through organic search ranks very high because of the long tail search. the number of times they give us their name, meaning they show up at lots of pages and they fill out lots of forms, means they're also a really good lead. And number of emails clicked that markets our content, and the number of visits that they come to our website. What we know is that the ROI of content marketing is embedded in these bars that show the highest lead value. And so if I have a lead that I know is worth $450 to me, meaning I may have 10 of those leads, and it may have cost me $4,500 to get, or I have 10,000 of those leads, and it cost me $4,500 to get those leads, but I can convert 10 of them. Those leads are worth $450 for me. And if I can acquire those leads for, and if my lifetime values of my customers that I acquire are higher than $450, I can make a really good business using content to drive leads. The problem with this for most businesses is that leads demand a lot of content created. So if you want more and more people to look at more and more content, you have to create that content for them. But we know for sure in both our testing in the early days and then our validation groups that there is no arguing with the correlation that the number of page views, right, will always increase the number of leads or the percentage of conversion or the value of the lead. So it's all about content consumption as far as we're concerned in our own marketing. So the first point, the reason that so many businesses do have challenges in creating the right content is just the fact of getting started. And they don't know what to write or what to create. And Steve's going to go through this in quite some detail. But the fact is there are no worries. The thing is you should just start. And the best thing to do is begin with a blog. And to understand as you start to write content that you're writing about the information your normal prospects who you do business with and ask you questions all the time that they need answered. What are the things that they ask you all the time? That's the stuff you should just start writing about. And you should address the information that they have, the needs that they have, and forget about worrying about keywords and stuffing titles and so forth, because if you write naturally, good things will just start happening. You can start to get focused, and Steve will talk about this too, around titles, around your lead paragraphs, around the length of your post, which we recommend at 400 words, or more, and how you tag your posts, and then some small little SEO plugins. And the one we recommend most to everybody is the Yoast WordPress SEO. It's a really well integrated SEO if you're on the WordPress platform, and will do a lot of the work for you in a really intuitive way, and that's Yoast. So getting this content created has to get put into a manageable approach, and calendars need to be created. Most of the time I recommend that a business starts with 6 blog posts a month. It's a good starting point. It's enough content to develop a rhythm and for you to start building a system around. Eventually, you need to get further along. Like with us at DigitalSherpa, we're creating 2 or 3 blog posts a day. You need to engage your team in your business and assign them blog posts. They're going to say to you at some point, we don't have time to create blog posts, and that's when you say back to them that you don't have time to cut their weekly paycheck. Test outsourcing also as an opportunity. I'm just raising Xeris as an example. It's an awesome outsourcing platform and a place that we get lots of our freelance writers from. And then think about curating content. You don't always have to create 100% of the content. Create really good feeds of content on your social web, on your RSS, on your readers and so forth, and look for the content that makes a couple of good points across a couple of different websites, and summarize and connect the pieces of content that you are discovering at different websites in your own blog posts. And then use these sources and link to these sources, because if you link to the sources, they become honored in this world, in this new link economy that we have, that you're sharing their stuff and they'll share your stuff. And that's the way to penetrate other people's communities. You got to keep content regular and fresh, and you got to think about one video, one white paper, one content giveaway, whether it be a catalog or whether it be a photo book or whether it be a white paper, whatever, and one webinar is a good way to start your diversification beyond the blog content strategy. The next thing is you need to capture the names of the people that show up at your blog. And if to take one real easy step at blog conversion before you get sucked into a much more extravagant inbound marketing and lead management system, there's a very simple plugin called What Would Seth Godin Do? And you should download that into your blog, and you should activate it. And one of the things, I don't know if some of you know me, but I'm also a wine blogger, and so this is the active plugin on my wine blog. And when you log on there and you go to WineZag, you'll find that if you're new here at WineZag, you may want to subscribe to regular tips and stories, because I want people to give me their email name so that I can have that and figure out what to do with it when I'm ready to monetize this blog. As you move along, it's important to set up spreadsheets like this, where you're actually breaking down your organic search traffic, your traffic from social media webinars, your direct traffic, and you're tracking how much you're spending in each area, how many leads each area is creating, what your cost of that lead is, and how many contracts you're generating. Because at the end of the day, it's not about traffic, it's not about click-throughs, and it's not about anything else but good economics for you, where your cost to acquire the customer on the web is lower than the lifetime value of that customer in your business environment. And you need to go beyond just where the traffic is coming from and understanding exactly what your visitor to lead conversion rate is in every one of these areas, and making sure that it increases each month as you continue to optimize your program. So let me turn it over to Steve now to talk a little bit more about creating this strategy for content and the planning process so you can get yourself to the stage of conversion thinking.
All right, thanks, Adam. That was great. Can you hear me okay?
I got you.
Okay. All right, so yeah, that was a great explanation of content marketing. What I want to get into is the actual strategy and planning for all this that Adam was talking about. And you know, by now I'm sure, like Adam said, you've probably been out there, you've heard the experts talking about content marketing, and whenever there's that sort of talk, they're usually going to be talking about content strategy to some degree. And you know, from what I've noticed, a lot of the people out there talking about strategy, you know, there's a lot of people get kind of stressed out about it. You know, it can become kind of complicated. There's big corporations that do strategy one way, but most smaller and kind of the average business, it's a different kind of game plan, because you know, it's got to be practical. Can't take forever. It can't take 30 business you know, board meetings to get it done. It's got to be something really practical. So that's what we really hope to do today. Is I want to kind of give you a roadmap for helping you figure out how to create an actionable content strategy that really makes sense for your business, that you can really put into practice in a real way. So let me just make sure I can. Yep, there we go. Did I move it? Okay, so let me get back here. There we go. Sorry, I'm just getting a handle on this pointer here. So, all right, so first off, what is a content strategy? Just very quickly, everyone kind of have different ideas, different experts talk about it and have different thoughts about how to explain it. For us over here, it's very simply kind of the who, what, why, when, where when it comes to your content efforts. You know, who's going to be doing what, what's going to be done, why are you doing it, which is an important one. A lot of people think that's just kind of an exercise, but it's important that everyone on your team know why are we doing this? Why is it important to our business? Adam went through a lot of that in terms of the benefits of content marketing and how it really leads to leads and conversions. So it's important to know the why. When is it being done? How often? Adam talked about kind of doing regular blog posts, how often you're going to be publishing those, and other forms of content. How often are you going to be doing each form of content? And then finally, where are you going to be publishing the content? How are you going to be distributing it? And finally, promoting it. And then, so the question that we really get a lot here from our users is, do I really need to spend the time creating a strategy? Is that really important, or can I just kind of jump in? The answer that I usually give people when it comes to do you need a content strategy is yes and no. Okay, and the reason I say that is because going back to the yes, it is important. It can definitely, there's a lot of benefits of taking the time to really think through a comprehensive strategy and just thinking through all those points I just mentioned. Who's going to be doing it, how often, what exactly is going to be done, and all that. It definitely is helpful. However, what I've seen, the reason I say no is because you really don't need to spend a lot of time thinking and coming up with a really complex strategy in order to get started. And that's the mistake I see a lot of companies make, is they kind of get bogged down in the strategy phase and they think, oh, we've got to spend all this time and get it right and get it perfect. And if you do that, sometimes you just end up putting it off, and it never ends up happening. So, it's an important thing to do, but don't get so stressed out about it. Don't let it stop you from at least getting started. At least, get out there and start blogging. The best thing you can do is just get out there and start doing it, and the strategy will kind of evolve over time. As you get feedback, as you start doing it and posting and publishing content, you'll hear feedback, you'll learn from your writers, you'll get to know your writers better, they get to know you, and the strategy will just evolve over time. All right, so let's jump into actually creating the strategy and walking it through step by step, okay? So really, one of the best places to start when it comes to creating a strategy is thinking through your main goals that you want to accomplish. And these are going to be just kind of big picture goals. It's important for you and your team to kind of just think about, why are we doing this? What are the main things we want to accomplish? Here are some common goals that a lot of companies are going to kind of think of as their main reasons for initiating a content marketing kind of effort and coming up with a strategy in the first place. Establishing your company and your organization as experts and authorities in your field. That's a really critical one. When people trust you, they think of you as the expert, they're going to come back to you more. They're going to, the studies show you're going to get higher conversion rates when people trust you more. And giving people free, important, relevant, helpful information builds trust and really presents you as the authority. Other people really focus more on the SEO component, which there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people think of content marketing as really an SEO play, and that's okay, because it really is an effective way. It's really now the only way, the only legitimate way to really drive a lot of organic search engine traffic is to create a lot of great content and get it out there. And every page you create is another chance for someone to find your page or your article. And then Adam talked about, those charts that show the more content you create. There's a lot of studies out there that really, it's not surprising. The more content you create, the more kind of ways that people can find you, and the more leads and sales that's going to result in. Attracting readers to your site with the information and then converting them to leads and sales. We always say converting people from information seekers, you convert those people into action takers. So they didn't come to the web thinking they were going to do anything, to buy anything, or sign up to anything. They came looking for information. They landed on your page. You gave them some great free information, but right along the side are those call to actions, and you converted that person into an action taker. The other really important goal that you could set is to build your email database, using white papers and ebooks. I've seen people like HubSpot have really just built their business from the very beginning by mastering that technique of creating really premium content, creating white papers and ebooks. And then you go there, and in order to get the ebook, you got to give them your email and sign up, and that way. And nowadays, everyone you talk to, and somehow they end up on a HubSpot email list, and everyone's getting great information from them because they got signed up. And then finally, just increasing social awareness by using social media to build awareness. All right, step 2, defining your target audience. So what is a target audience? It's really just who you're talking to, and why bother doing it again? it's not so much just an exercise. There is a really practical reason for doing this, because when you go to write the content, whether you do it yourself, whether you assign it to someone on your team, whether you assign it to a freelancer, or you hire an agency or some other third party, they're going to need to understand who your audience is. Who are they writing to? Writers really appreciate knowing, who am I writing this for? Because when they understand that audience, they can better tailor the content directly to them. So in terms of coming up with your target audience, these are the basic questions you're going to want to know. What are they interested in? What's their age, gender, education, marital status, income, location, anything else that can really separate them out from the overall audience and get a picture of who they are. You may hear a lot about the term like buyer personas out there. That's becoming big, and that takes it to another level where you can actually build kind of a character and give them a name, Mary or John, and Mary looks like this, and John is this demographic and looks like this, and that way everyone on your team can really visualize that person, and the writers can even think about that person as they write. All right, so next step is thinking about coming up with your content team. Who's going to be doing what? And this really gets into where you can make a decision as to the different options you have for doing things internally versus outsourcing to an agency or another third party to handle your content production for you. And look, all of these choices are completely legitimate. It all really depends on just your organization, what feels right to you, what makes sense. You can try one, and if it doesn't work, try another. I've seen that, a lot of times where people will just experiment and try one, and they find that, that option took too much time. I'm going to try getting help here. And then, so on the one extreme is the top row, where you do everything in-house. And that includes really breaking it down to the project management, and then to who's going to be writing and editing the content. Obviously there's other roles, but those are kind of the two things we separate out. And if you do it in-house, that means you're going to be managing everything, coming up with kind of the strategy, putting the people in place, finding the writers, hiring them, training them, assigning them, and managing the whole editorial workflow, and then assigning it to someone internally to write it, and having an internal editor to edit it and get it published. Again, legitimate route to take. In terms of time and cost, when I put time and cost in here, again, they're all relative. Things are going to depend on your organization. Cost is relative in the sense that, if you're getting great results and, it's profitable, then maybe it isn't a high cost. But generally speaking, if you're going to hire full-time writers or hire full-time editors, it's obviously going to increase your fixed costs. But again, if it's working for you, it might make sense. Lately, in terms of the second row here for in-house, if you want to manage your own project, but then kind of freelance out the writing and editing, that's another legitimate avenue if that seems to make sense for you. You can save some money. Generally with freelancers, there's some kind of downward pressure on price, so you can find good deals and things like that. And again, it's going to take time working with those writers and building relationships, but it can work if you do it right. You have the right platform and kind of technology to help facilitate that. You can save time from having to write it yourself. The freelancer can a lot of times do the bulk of the work, and then you can come in and edit it. The costs can just range. It really can range the full gamut from low to high, really, because it just depends on how good of a writer you hire and how much you negotiate with that writer. So, and then the third option is a very legitimate option as well, and it's one that we really promote a lot and encourage a lot with our users. Even though we have a lot of users that do things themselves, a lot of them end up kind of trying it and then realizing, I don't have the time or the talent in-house to do it ourselves, so they end up hiring another third-party agency or company to kind of manage the process. That's going to obviously save you time. They're going to manage a lot of the steps. The cost can really range again from low to high, depending on there's a lot of obviously very high-end agencies. But there's a lot of very affordable agencies that can really do the bulk of your content efforts and handle everything for you as well. And when it comes to kind of figuring out which route makes the most sense for you, sorry, I'm just getting used to this thing. Here we go. It's going to depend on just your budget, how much time you have, how much talent, how much knowledge is on your team in terms of content marketing. And if you don't have the talent in-house, it might makes sense to outsource. And these are the common roles. You got your, it's a newer kind of fancy term, the chief content officer, but it really just means the person who's going to be in charge of the effort. You got project managers, topics and title developers, and obviously the writers and the editors. But again, whichever route you go in terms of in-house versus outsourcing, no matter which route you go, it's going to still take time. There is no magic vending machine out there for content where you just put a little money in and perfect content spits out. You're going to have to take time understanding the process a little bit. Even if you hire an agency, they're going to do most of the work, but they're still going to need a little bit of your feedback. And so that's going to take a little bit of time just providing feedback so that you get back what you're looking for. And if you're working directly with a freelance writer, you're going to need to work with that writer and build that relationship and all that. So, okay, and then in terms of choosing the technology, just assuming again that you were going to do it all yourself, maybe in-house, the one key point is that there are technologies out there, obviously, that can facilitate and help you kind of organize the process all the way from planning your project to coming up with topics and titles and assignment and collaborating on the content, editorial workflow, all the way through to publishing. So there's definitely, things have really changed a lot in the past 5 or 10 years. There's a lot of really great technologies out there that can help. And again, it's just, even if you use technology, you can't, you got to go into it with the right expectations, that you got to be willing to commit to learning the system, learning the process, and again, it's not just technology, it's people. You're dealing with writers, whether it be on your team or freelancers or the agency. You're going to be dealing with people, and that means building relationships and all the normal things you got to deal with when it comes to working with teams and motivating people and getting to know them and then letting them get to know you and your style. And then some other common tools and technologies you're going to need is obviously the CMS you're going to be publishing to. You got to have someone on your team that, if you're going to be doing it yourself, really knows that CMS platform. Maybe the keyword research tools to find topics, just the writing, word processor, spreadsheets for lists, and Adam mentioned the editorial calendar. That's really important, and other social media tools. Okay, and then finally, when it comes to the strategy here, choosing the content types and scheduling. So it's all about looking at figuring out, what types of content you're going to focus on. There's a lot of different types out there. The key thing we always say is, look, don't feel like you have to create them all, and that's a mistake a lot of people make. They jump in and they just go too far, too overboard, and they just take on more than they can handle. And before you know it, they're kind of just spitting out kind of mediocre content because they're not really focused on perfecting one method. I think Seth Godin actually talks about that, where he really focuses on, I believe it's email, and he doesn't really bother with a lot of other forms of content marketing. He just perfects the one that he cares about, and and that's it. So you could start with one. We a lot of times recommend blogging because it's a nice, simpler form of content. It's a nice way to get regular content out there, and you can use that to just get started, start getting feedback from your team and your users and readers, and then just get better over time. And then once you perfect blogging, you can move on to start maybe doing a white paper once every couple months, and maybe an ebook once a quarter. And again, after you've developed a relationship with an agency or a third party or maybe a freelancer, and they've gotten to know you and you've gotten to know them, you wouldn't really want to jump into content marketing and jump right to maybe an ebook that's really complicated. First get the process rolling and get the people in place and relationships going until you find that you're creating really great blog posts, and then move on to more complex forms of content. Okay, so kind of just went through this, and then finally, figure out how often you want to schedule each of those forms of content, and then get them on your calendar, get them on your editorial calendar. Once you figure out, if it's once or twice a week, that's when you can start planning on your calendar. Okay, so step 6 has to do with SEO strategy. Adam talked about this. In terms of coming up in terms of your content strategy plan, when we think of SEO, we just think of, look, focus on creating great content. So don't stress out about, like Adam was saying, don't stress out about, reverse engineering the Google algorithm. That may have worked 10 or 15 years ago. That's just not the game we're in anymore. Take that energy you would have thought of, trying to figure out all the tricks, and put that into just creating better content. Spend a few more minutes editing the content and adding some flair to it. That's going to get you go a lot longer way to help you get better results. Because nowadays, as Google is now with Panda and all these Penguin and updates, they're factoring in search social media factors, you know. So if you create great content and people share it, it's going to rank better, and you're going to get better results. Now, that being said, there are some SEO techniques that are worth thinking about and doing, and even this is straight from Google. You know, Matt Cutts, you know, is engineer at Google, his videos, where even he talks about, hey, it still makes sense to put the keyword in the content and maybe put the keyword in the title. You know, a lot of SEO experts agree that putting the keyword in the title is the #1 on-page SEO factor that you can do, you know. And then just including it, you know, Google says putting the keyword in the body of the content helps Google's algorithm know what that page is about. If you write an article about horseback riding and you don't mention the words horseback riding in there, how is Google going to know to rank you for that term? And Google wants to rank you for the right keyword so that when people search for that term, you know, your article does come up and it's going to be relevant. Okay, so and then in terms of developing your promotion plan, Adam's going to be talking more about the mechanics of, you know, actually getting, you know, promoting your content in a second here. But in terms of your content strategy, it's just a matter of thinking about where are you going to be, you know, what forms of promotion you're going to be using and focusing on. And again, don't need to do all of them. You know, just start with 1 or 2, get good at that, and then move on to the next one. It could be just getting good at your actual blogging again and just publishing that to your website. And that itself is kind of one form of promoting your content. It's just using your own website, getting it out there, hopefully getting it shared through social media and ranking in the search engines. Obviously, social media, posting it out there and sharing it, press releases and email newsletters and sending out emails to your audience. And then guest blogging can be a great way to get your content out there and get, you know, inbound links back to you and help SEO and as well as just drive traffic and awareness. Okay, so that's kind of a basic rundown of creating a content strategy. Now let's get into the actual production process and actually walking through that kind of that architecture that Justin and Adam mentioned of actually thinking through the steps of creating a great piece of content. So once you have your strategy, or whether maybe you're just jumping right in, one of the first things you want to do is really do some research and figure out what topics are you going to be writing about. Okay, so we think of it in terms of actually creating a list, whether it be a spreadsheet or using some other tools. Create a master list of all the topics you'd like to write about at some point, and that way you can refer back to it. There's different ways to come up with topics. You can just think of them. You can take customer surveys, you know, of what your customers and users are interested in. You can get feedback from your internal team, especially your support team that has direct contact with your customers. Now, the one we recommend the most, and that I think is really the simplest, easiest, free, you know, is using a keyword research tool. So that way you can find out what are people really interested in. I mean, if they're not searching for it, if it has really low search volume, then that means people aren't interested in it. Because if they were, they'd be searching for it. So it's really a great way to gauge what people's interests are in. And if they're not interested in it and they're not searching for it, well, then why bother writing about it? You know, who cares if you rank high for a term if no one's searching for it and you rank #1 and no one's there. Now, that being said, it's a gray area because Adam mentioned that those long tail phrases can be really powerful. You know, but there has to be at least a little bit of search volume on them. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to spend your time writing about it. So it's just a matter of thinking through that and figuring out where you want to draw the line and which keywords to write about. But we think that's really the best way to come up with topics quickly and easily. And another way is really looking at what content you may already have in your company, whether it be print publications or other books or publications you may have written, taking those and maybe repurposing them into other forms of content. You know, taking a white paper and converting them to blog posts or ebooks and converting them, you know, vice versa. So, all right, step 2 when it comes to the actual content creation process is really going to now be taking those keywords and those topics you just came up with. Whoop, let me just get it back there. Taking those topics you just came up with. Let me try this one more time. There we go. And now converting those topics into actual specific titles. So if you think about it, a keyword kind of serves as a great little general topic for a subject matter. Okay, but one keyword you could write 100 different articles about it. You know, just taking the horseback riding phrase. You know, you could write articles 100 different. You can go 100 different directions on the word horseback riding. You know, so one keyword can go a long way. So you now want to take, you know, when it comes time to actually figure out, okay, for next week, what do we want to write about? What do we want to publish for our editorial calendar? What do we want to get on there? Well, you go back to your list of topics you came up with, pick one out, and maybe it's even specific to a time, like a seasonal topic, maybe, if that makes sense, and then take that topic and flush it out into a more specific title. And really, you know, titles have become so critical. I mean, you probably all know how important titles are now with social media, let alone even just for good old SEO, you know, getting it to rank, having the keyword in the title. When it does rank in the search engines, boring titles are not going to get clicked on, you know, as much. So it's important to have a catchy, engaging title that gets people to click on it and get people to share it. And when people do share it, when they look at their phone or they look at, you know, Twitter or whatever, they're not going to see the whole post. Or what are they going to see? They're going to see the title. So if it's a boring title, they're not even going to read it. So titles are really important, and creating great titles, it's an art, it's a science, it's a skill that I believe is really learned over time, and you can and people can get better and better at it the more they do it. So I would really recommend having, if you do it internally, having someone on your team really get good at it and make them kind of the person that is the person that creates all the titles. You know, it's something I've seen a lot of companies doing successfully lately. And again, if you hire an agency, they're, you know, usually the agency or the third-party solution is going to have someone that is really good at creating titles to do that for you. But if you do end up doing them yourself, one other thing to remember is just you never want to be under the gun for creating content, and that's where your editorial calendar planning comes into play. You want to create some titles beforehand, you know, hopefully even a month beforehand, so you can have at least 1 month ahead of schedule, you know, as opposed to being under the gun to have content. Oh my God, we got to get our next blog post published in 2 days, and then you got to hope that the writer gets it in time, and you got to edit it in time, and if there's revisions, you know, now you're stressed out. So, you know, create them in advance, get them assigned on your editorial calendar, and you'll save yourself a lot of stress. All right, so next step is to assign it to writers, and that could be assigning it internally or to a freelancer. And, you know, if it's specific to your company, if it's something that requires a lot of deep knowledge, you may want to do it internally, or you could assign it to a freelancer if it's something more informational. Writers are not mind readers. You want to be very clear and concise in your instructions. You know, consider the writer's schedule when doing it, and finally, you know, the right platform is going to help you, but it'll still going to take you time to do it no matter what. Managing your writers, just remember to motivate your writers. You know, keep a handful of writers on staff or freelancers that you get to know, so you can you know, pull in, you know, one out if you need one. Pay them quickly, motivate them, give them bonuses, and just provide a lot of constructive criticism. And then finally, reviewing your content. You know, editing, not every great writer is a great editor, so find a good editor, either internally or a freelancer, and stick with them. And don't expect to get perfect stuff back your first time. You know, good content requires collaboration and editing, you know, sometimes. So if you're not happy with a piece, just move on to a different writer. When you're sampling writers, if you're not happy with their talent level, you may need to move on. If they're good, then you can invest some time getting to know them better and then letting them get to know you and your style. But consider letting the writer create a first draft, and then you can spend your time editing. So, and then finally, just where you're publishing, your own website, your guest posts, blogging, your press release distribution. Just figure out which avenues you're going to be using to publish your content. So I know I went way over my time. I apologize, Adam. I'm going to shoot it back to you.
That's no problem, Steve. Not a problem at all. So let me kind of bring this to a closure and talk a little bit about marketing your content. Steve was just talking about the various ways and places to get your content published, and I you know, like to look at them in 3 different ways: owned media, paid media, and earned media. And basically, when we think about owned media, you're tending to thinking about profiles that you own, publishing platforms like your website, your blog, and so forth. Paid media is basically you're accessing an audience that some other media media entity is aggregating. So online, this would come in terms of display ads and any kind of paid search, banner ads and so forth like that, where you're trying to get in front and kind of interject yourself into an ongoing media activity. And then earned media, of course, is, traditionally we think about that as public relations. And as we get more and more into the social sphere, we're thinking more about word of mouth and buzz and viral spread. Each one of these has its own benefits and challenges. The benefits of owned media, obviously, I can control everything and I can determine how long I want it out there. And then, of course, the challenges in earned media is I don't have control, and there could be negative things said. But there's so many fantastic benefits when you get down to earned media about credibility itself and how more and more consumers are trusting other consumers online as opposed to company communications that are more traditional in owned media channels. So it's a really important chart to keep in mind because we have a tendency to say, okay, I'm going to go do social media, or I'm going to focus on my website this month, or you know what, let's try cost per click advertising. And the fact of the matter is that each one of these media types has its own benefit to your business and its own challenges, and it's only a aggregation of these activities under one strategy that really makes sense. So if social media is earned media, but how does it really fit into content marketing? And Steve touched on this just for a second. And if this is the table of elements, if you'll go with me here, on SEO ranking factors, and you break the table into 4 areas: things that happen off the page with your content, things that happen on the page as benefits and SEO ranking factors, and then things like violations and blocking that are bad things you do on the page or bad things people do off the page to block you, right? But let's focus up here. Literally 1/4 of the real estate on this table is devoted to off-the-page SEO, meaning who's linking to you, what kind of people with social influence are sharing and liking your content, how much trust have you developed inside social networks where your content is being spread, and what are the basic personal characteristics of the people that are interacting with your content. And more search is relying on, the search algorithms are relying on the activity that occurs around your content on the social networks. I want to give you a path to get at this, because if it's time for you to get social, the key is you need to find where your market is active. It might be Twitter. In highly visual markets, it tends to be Pinterest. It might be Facebook. It might be Instagram. And so your marketplace is aggregating and congregating on one or a few of these social networks more than others, and the only way you can discover that is to go and participate yourself until you want to narrow down where you hang out. One of the other big things in creating content is leveraging not only your networks that you cultivate, but other people's networks. And I'm going to give you 2 examples here of 2 posts that I myself wrote at WineZag that had very different outcomes in terms of traffic. You see this post back on June 23rd got 30 likes on Facebook and 6 tweets. You see this post that got published back on June 4th got 187 likes and 25 tweets. The difference in the social sharing that occurred between these 2 was the fact that here I wrote about executive chef Tyler Williams. I linked to his Twitter profile. I tweeted this post at Tyler, and I tweeted it at several other Atlanta chefs, and before you know it, they were sharing this good news about the press that Woodfire Grill got, and they started sharing it in their networks. This post here got one of the highest first-day viewerships of any post that I've written on this blog in almost 5 years. Here, I did not leverage anybody who had a really strong social standing. And as a result, I did not leverage any other networks except my networks, which yield this amount of sharing. This post will eventually rank very high in Google, higher than this, because of the social influence it developed. The other big piece is just thinking about link leverage. So here's a post that I wrote a long time ago about these 3 wines, and I mentioned this one particular place where you can buy this wine. And I linked to it, and I started to see all of this exit traffic leaving through that link. And of course, Vintages, who is in the business of selling fine wine to thousands of people, saw the traffic being referred over. They, in turn, again in this very, very kind link economy, said, hey, we need to share this on our blog to our people because somebody said something good about us, and let's go say something really good about this guy, Adam Japko. So this kind of linking back and forth is a way to access other people's networks. The other way at this, and this is a case study that we did here on Stack's apartment community in Atlanta, and it's a really cool neighborhood in it's called Cabbagetown, and it's a very art-oriented neighborhood, and every year they have a really cool art show, and they engage their residents, they engage the local community. But what happens is they promote it heavily to their residents, other Atlanta artists, local retailers, and all of these people start creating content about it. And what happens is that Stacks ends up putting itself at the center of this entire community for a week or two. And the community surrounding Stacks starts to promote what's going on at Stacks, and Stacks has effectively leveraged the community's social graph, and they have benefited from in Google search because of all of the content sharing and social sharing. So the last thing that I want to mention to you is the other way that's super important to remarket the content that you're creating that Steve talked about on your blog and your white papers and so forth is to email it to the people whose email names you're capturing, like I mentioned earlier with the Seth Godin plugin and various other tools that are more sophisticated. We have much of that in our suite at DigitalSherpa, and there are other tools out there, but is to measure the open rates and conversion rates from each email you send up based on the content it featured. And you'll see some of our absolute best open rates on emails do come from the webinars just like you're on today, or come from us remarketing the posts through an RSS email every week from DigitalSherpa. And again, if you remember back to the chart I showed you, our highest value lead is the person who consumes the most amount of content on our page. So email marketing is a way to keep bringing people back, and if you find the products and the topics that drive the highest open rates, you're on the path to success. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I'll turn it over to Justin to close it up as we're kind of on the hour right now.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Steve. Yeah, guys, I want to kind of I'll run through this real quick and kind of announce the winner of the gift card. And to answer a lot of questions real quickly, we will be emailing the slides out, and we're going to try to get a recording out to you as well. If we're not going to have time to answer any questions on air, however, please email me any question. I'd be glad to help. My email is Justin, Justin, @digitalsherpa.com, and I'll be sure to answer every single question. You can tweet it using the greatest CS, or just tweet at us. It's DigitalSherpas, plural. So quickly, the 3 key takeaways. No matter your industry, your audience, or your budget, remarkable content is always possible. And however you do choose to kind of get that remarkable content created, you're going to have to devote some of your time to the process, because really, nobody knows your business like you. And lastly, have a strategy that provides a clear roadmap to achieving your set goals. And when you're first starting out, just keep it simple. Okay. So, thank you for attending. Like I said, the slides will be going out soon. And then I want to announce that Catherine Bowler, I apologize if I slaughtered your last name, but you're the winner of the $100 Amazon gift card. I'll be emailing you directly to work out the details of that. So, like I said, thank you for attending. If you have any questions, tweet us. And unfortunately, we won't be able to answer the WordPress, or I'm sorry, the GoToWebinar questions, but please email me at justin@digitalsherpa.com, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. All right. Thank you so much for attending, guys, and we'll be talking with you soon. Another question?